By the time a money problem becomes dramatic, it usually has been expensive for a long time. That is the part people miss. They think the financial damage starts when the car finally dies, when the credit card balance gets ugly, when the landlord raises the rent, when the body gives up, when the job becomes unbearable, when the account balance finally looks alarming enough to force a conversation. A lot of the damage starts much earlier than that. It starts when something is still tolerable. The commute is annoying, but manageable. The mattress is bad, but not catastrophic. The car is unreliable, but it still runs. The apartment is too far from everything, but the rent looks better on paper. The checking account setup is messy, but you usually catch the transfers in time. The kitchen is so disorganized that cooking feels like a punishment, but technically you could do it if you really tried. The job is draining, but not impossible. The life is full of friction, but none of the friction is dramatic enough to feel like an emergency. So people adapt. They work around it. They cope. They build little routines around things that are not working very well, and then they stop seeing those things as financial problems. They just start calling them life. That is where the money starts disappearing. Nick here, and today I want to talk about one of the quietest ways people stay financially stuck, which is the habit of tolerating low-grade problems for so long that they stop feeling expensive. I want to talk about why "it's not that bad" can become one of the costliest phrases in adult life, how badly designed daily systems quietly turn into recurring financial losses, and why one of the biggest differences between people who build real stability and people who keep treading water is not discipline in some heroic sense. A lot of the time, it is just a lower tolerance for drag. Why tolerance gets mistaken for maturity. There is a version of adulthood that gets praised a lot and questioned almost never. It is the ability to put up with things. You deal with the commute. You deal with the old car. You deal with the sleep issue. You deal with the clutter. You deal with the billing nonsense. You deal with the bad workflow. You deal with the stress. You deal with the little inefficiencies because grown adults do not complain about every inconvenience. They keep moving. That sounds mature. Sometimes it is. But there is another version of that behavior that is not maturity at all. It is just adaptation to expensive friction. And adaptation is dangerous because the moment something becomes normal, your brain stops pricing it properly. You stop asking what it costs. You stop asking what it changes. You stop asking how many other expensive behaviors it is quietly causing downstream. That is what this whole script is about. Not giant disasters. Not the obvious financial mistakes everyone likes to talk about. I want to talk about how people slowly train themselves to live inside avoidable friction, and how that friction then starts charging them in money, time, energy, health, and bad decisions. The first cost. Friction makes ordinary life more expensive. Let's start simple. Imagine someone lives 35 minutes from work instead of 15 because the cheaper apartment looked like the responsible decision when they signed the lease. On paper, maybe it was. The rent is $250 lower. Nice. That feels financially smart. Now let's watch the rest of the system. They spend more on gas. They spend more on car wear. They lose time every day. They are more likely to buy coffee because mornings are rushed. More likely to grab breakfast on the go. More likely to pay for convenience because getting home late makes normal life harder to execute. Then there is the less obvious damage. They arrive at the day more drained. They have less room for gym, meal prep, side work, skill building, rest, or anything else that requires even a medium amount of energy. So the cheaper apartment does not just cost rent. It changes the shape of the day. And once it changes the shape of the day, it starts influencing spending patterns, food patterns, stress patterns, even career patterns. That is the part people miss when they think in isolated categories. A bad system does not just cost what it costs directly. It changes what becomes likely afterward. The second cost. Friction pushes people toward convenience spending. This is where small problems become shockingly expensive. Take a badly functioning kitchen. Not a glamorous topic, but stay with me. If your kitchen is cramped, messy, under-equipped, full of half-working tools, no counter space, weird storage, and the emotional atmosphere of a hostage negotiation, you are less likely to cook. That is not because you are lazy. It is because the system has made cooking harder than it needs to be. Now, every hard day has a stronger gravitational pull toward delivery, takeout, random grocery runs, overpriced convenience food, and whatever else solves dinner without requiring you to enter the battlefield of your own kitchen. The same thing happens with every badly designed part of life. A poor sleep setup pushes you toward caffeine and convenience. A disorganized home pushes you toward duplicate purchases because you cannot find what you already own. A weak admin system pushes you toward fees, rushed decisions, and renewed services you barely use. A bad commute pushes you toward spending for speed. A chaotic calendar pushes you towards spending for recovery. People love analyzing the spending without fixing the friction. That is backwards. A lot of spending is not the disease. It is the symptom. The third cost, friction, lowers your earning power. This one is bigger than it sounds. When people live inside too much daily drag, it does not just affect what they spend. It affects what they can sustain. A person sleeping badly, commuting too far, constantly reorganizing around weak systems, and patching small problems all week is less likely to apply for better roles, learn new skills, negotiate well, stay emotionally sharp in interviews, do focused side work, or build the kind of systems that increase income over time. This matters because a lot of financial ceilings are not purely income problems. They are capacity problems. The person technically has time to improve their career, but the version of their life they are living burns so much energy on basic maintenance that they never consistently reach the work that creates upward movement. Then they tell themselves they just have not had the right opportunity yet. Maybe. But sometimes the opportunity problem is really a friction problem. A case study that explains the whole trap. Picture two people making about $78,000 a year. Same city, same general intelligence, same rough life stage. Neither one is rich. Neither one is an obvious financial crisis. Person A has a life full of tolerated drag. The car is unreliable, but still technically usable. The sleep is mediocre. The apartment saves money, but creates logistical pain. The kitchen is annoying. The finances are slightly disorganized. There are too many small tasks always hanging open. Every week contains little points of preventable friction, and every point of friction has been mentally categorized as just part of life. Person B is not living luxuriously, but they have slowly removed the biggest recurring frictions. Better systems, better routines, fewer logistical annoyances, cleaner admin, more reliable core tools, a life that takes less effort to maintain. Now watch what happens over 3 years. Person A spends more on convenience, more on reactive decisions, more on replacement costs, more on stress management, more on, I just need this week to stop fighting me. Person B spends less in those categories and has more usable energy left over. Not more virtue, more usable energy. That extra energy shows up everywhere. Better money decisions, more consistent savings, fewer leaks, better work performance, more willingness to apply, ask, plan, compare, and follow through. 3 years later, person A feels like they work hard and somehow still do not have much to show for it. Person B looks more naturally organized, even if what really happened is they made the environment less punishing. That difference compounds. Why the brain stops seeing tolerated problems accurately. Now let's talk about the psychology, because this is where it gets really interesting. Human beings are alarmingly good at normalizing whatever repeats. If something hurts once, you notice it. If it annoys you every day for a year, your brain often stops treating it as a problem and starts treating it as background. This is useful in some areas of life. It is not useful in money, because once the friction becomes background, you stop questioning its price. The extra gas becomes normal. The weekly takeout becomes normal. The monthly overcharge becomes normal. The bad sleep becomes normal. The expensive workarounds become normal. And once they are normal, they stop feeling like choices. That is the tolerance trap. You are not choosing the expensive path every day in a conscious way. You are just living inside systems that keep nudging you toward it. The hidden category nobody budgets for. Most people have a mental category for rent, food, transport, insurance, debt, and entertainment. Almost nobody has a category called money I spend because my life is badly configured. And yet that category is huge. It includes emergency convenience spending, duplicate purchases, reactive fees, speed premiums, stress spending, bad recovery spending, repair delays, and all the little payments made because the smoother version of life is not available. If people actually added up the monthly cost of tolerated friction, a lot of them would realize they are not losing to luxury. They are losing to drag. That is an entirely different financial conversation. Where this hurts the most. There are a few areas where tolerated problems become especially expensive. Sleep. Bad sleep is an economic event. It changes food choices, patience, output, planning, focus, self-control, and recovery. A person who sleeps badly is operating a more expensive brain. Transportation. An unreliable car, bad commute, expensive parking setup, poor access, or constant travel stress does not just cost money directly. It changes the whole energy profile of the week. Food systems. If buying, storing, cooking, and cleaning around food is consistently annoying, food gets expensive fast. Not because groceries are the problem, because the system around them is weak. Financial admin. Messy accounts, poor automation, scattered bills, unclear due dates, ignored renewals, and open loops quietly produce a lot of losses. Work environment. A bad job with manageable misery is still expensive if it drains the energy required to leave. That last one matters more than people realize. Sometimes the cost of a tolerable but draining job is not just emotional. It is the years of higher income, stronger skills, and better options that never got built because the current system kept eating the bandwidth required to change it. Why people do not fix this sooner? Because none of these problems look urgent enough. That is the whole point. If your roof is gone, you deal with it. If your life is just slightly too inefficient in 7 different places, you adapt. People tolerate enormous cumulative damage because the damage arrives in low-resolution pieces. Nothing screams. Everything just drags. And drag is easy to rationalize. It still works. It's not ideal, but it's fine. I can deal with it. I'll fix it later. It would be nice, but it's not necessary. I should probably improve that at some point. That language sounds harmless. Financially, it can be devastating. Because the longer a low-grade problem stays in the system, the more likely it is to influence dozens of decisions around it. The false virtue of being able to put up with things. A lot of people are quietly proud of how much nonsense they can tolerate. The old mattress, the broken workflow, the ugly schedule, the unreliable setup, the low-grade logistical misery. They wear it like toughness. Sometimes it is toughness. A lot of the time, it is just unpaid adaptation. And unpaid adaptation has a cost. If your life requires extra effort every day just to function normally, you are spending resources, not always in a way that shows up on a receipt. Sometimes in energy, sometimes in time, sometimes in sharpness, sometimes in money 10 steps later. That is what makes this so easy to miss. The person who pushes through often gets moral credit, even while their finances are being quietly weakened by the structure they keep refusing to improve. What actually fixes it? Not becoming obsessed with optimization for the sake of optimization. This is not a call to turn your life into a sterile little laboratory where every object has a label and every spoon has a workflow. The point is not perfection. The point is to identify the repeated frictions that are quietly charging you over and over again. A useful question is this: what in my life keeps making ordinary days harder than they need to be? Not dramatic problems. Repeated ones. The answer might be the commute, the car, the kitchen, the billing system, the sleep setup, the apartment layout, the bad workflow, the job, the overbooked schedule, the part of your life you have been calling fine because dealing with it felt like a bigger task than enduring it. Once you see that clearly, the next question is even better. If I fixed this once, what expensive behaviors would it stop causing afterward? That is the real math. Not just what the fix costs. What the friction keeps costing if it stays. The strongest money lives are often the least friction-heavy. A lot of people imagine financial strength as income, net worth, or investing skill. Those matter. But there is another version of strength that gets ignored all the time. The financially strong life is often the one with the least unnecessary drag. Bills are simple. Systems are clear. Core tools are reliable. Food is manageable. Sleep is decent. The commute is sane. The life can be maintained without constant tactical effort. That is not boring. That is powerful. Because when the basics take less energy, you can use that energy somewhere better. Toward work. Toward planning. Toward income growth. Toward consistency. Toward actual compounding. That is one reason some people seem so much better with money. They are not constantly losing to small tolerated problems before the real financial game even starts. The part that should stay with you. A lot of financial struggle does not come from dramatic overspending. It comes from living in a version of life that has too much drag built into it. Too much friction. Too many tolerated annoyances. Too many systems that technically work while quietly making everything more expensive. That is the tolerance trap. It is what happens when not that bad becomes the standard, when little inefficiencies become normal, when repeated inconvenience stops feeling like a money problem even though it is shaping money all the time. If your finances feel weaker than they should, do not only look at the obvious categories. Look at what your life keeps making you compensate for. Because sometimes the real leak is not spending. Sometimes the real leak is the part of your life you got used to. And getting used to expensive friction can keep you poor for a very long time.